So, my topic is Indigenizing Early Childcare Experiences. The inspiration for my topic. So, in my current role as a child care services manager, I oversee an on site drop in child care center. Both of my children have attended the only tribal daycare in Oneida. I am passionate about promoting the visibility of Indigenous peoples' culture, language, and traditional knowledge. And I also care about the early child care experiences of the next seven generations. When I was researching my topic in regards to the historical context, I didn't really find a lot of early research that focused specifically on Indigenous children and their experiences with early education. While there was a lot of research regarding early educational research experiences for children, usually the research was focused on the dominant culture or population. So I started to just research the historical context of what early education consisted of for Indigenous children. And this early education and knowledge came from the home and the community. Generally, children were at homes with the families. Extended families were the first teachers. So, extended families were aunts, uncles, grandparents. They were all a part of the child's very first teachers. And the learning happened from the time the child woke up to the time that they went to sleep. The impacts of colonization disrupted this process, where times started changing. Parents started having to join the workforce, report to work every day. Initially, mothers were able to stay home, take care of the household and the children, but with financial, I guess, constraints, mothers started to have to work as well. There also began to form Head Starts and daycares, um, and initially, Western approaches to education were adopted. By using these approaches, it promoted the cultural erasure and assimilation for Indigenous people. So, as child care centers and Head Starts programs began to develop in tribal communities, concerns were brought about from parents, educators, community members, elders um, who voiced their concerns for wanting a more diverse learning environment for Indigenous children. In Oneida, there is one tribal daycare, and it's called Airport Road Child Care. They have always used research based curricula called Conscious Discipline and the Creative Curriculum. While both are great curricula and widely used, neither reflects the Indigenous pedagogies, worldviews, ways of learning, and neither curriculum has aspects of the Oneida culture and language. When we continue to use materials that reflect a dominant culture, the Indigenous child's identity and existence is ignored. In regards to the current status, when I was researching this area, I read a lot about new trends that are emerging for early education experiences for Indigenous children. Many language nests and immersion programs have been created among many nations and tribes. Oneida has Deyang Dakwa Language Nest, which opened in 2018, and it's a culturally based education delivered in the Oneida language only. The Hawaiian Language Immersion Program has produced over 4,000 children who are fluent speakers. They don't introduce English until grade 5. The Navajo Nation in 1995 created a Head Start program, and they used a curriculum called Ade'e Honizin, and it is a combination of the Diné culture and teachings with the creative curriculum. And it recognizes the need for the bilingual education in order to preserve the language. And so while the Navajo Nation has many fluent speakers, back in 1995, the educators already knew that they were going to need a bilingual education if they wanted to preserve the language. Some of the children were not getting the exposure to their language in the home, and I guess it was probably easier to immerse them in the language if they used a bilingual type of education. So each of these programs is different as it tailors to their community needs and reflects the culture of their communities. I guess what is similar among these three programs is that each program incorporates the involvement of the parents and the extended family into the education. So usually parents, extended families will participate in any events that these programs have, but usually they are participating and taking language lessons to use with the child when they are in the home. Some of the barriers that I found regarding early child care experiences and the need for implementing more culture and language or indigenizing the experience, where that some tribes and nations are more assimilated than others, which impacts the need for more culturally relevant early child care experiences. Some community members may feel that there's no need for Indigenous language in the future. Indigenous people are often misrepresented or left out of curriculum used in classrooms. Inaccurate portrayals of Indigenous people are prevalent in some early childhood experiences. And we see that with the common Thanksgiving theme where teachers are promoting lessons surrounding Thanksgiving or doing crafts with pilgrims and Indians. Sometimes Indigenous people are thought to be extinct, or when there is an acknowledgement of Indigenous people, sometimes they are often portrayed as a monoculture instead of acknowledging that there are hundreds of different nations and languages and unique differences when it comes to their culture, belief systems, traditions, and values. My action plan to indigenize early childcare experiences. I use the Oneida Economic Support Drop-in Childcare Center as my target location. So some of the things I came up with is that the staff members, meaning everybody involved from the manager to the childcare staff that will be interacting with the children, should all research and utilize curricula that reflects Native culture. So there are curricula that are out there that have been developed. And a couple of them that I found, one was called Lessons from Turtle Island, which is a Native curriculum in early childhood classrooms. Another one that I found was Circles, which is a culturally appropriate preschool curriculum for American Indian children. Both of these are very easy to find on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I thought of a collaboration with the Oneida Language Department to create classroom and educational learning materials that are specific to the Oneida culture. A collaborative effort would involve utilizing the Oneida language trainees to come to the drop-in childcare center to assess the environment and offer any recommendations about how to indigenize the learning environment. Maybe give feedback of what kind of materials can be put, on the wall for visuals, maybe what kind of toys, or how to really implement lessons that are reflective of the Oneida culture while also using the language. They can also invite the staff to the Oneida immersion classrooms to gain some ideas of how their classroom looks, how their lessons are, what kind of routines they have, and how they interact with the children. Oneida language trainees can come to the child care center several times per week to interact with babies, toddlers, and perhaps give the staff some language lessons or culture teachings to use within the classrooms. Storytelling is also a big component to my action plan. Storytelling is essential to Indigenous culture. Cultural stories have been passed down from generation to generation, carrying deep cultural meaning. Storytelling is how Indigenous people make sense of the world, teach about significant events, pass on historical knowledge, cultural beliefs and ceremonies. So I thought it would be cool for elders to come to the child care center several times a week for storytelling with the children. By also utilizing an elder to promote, to do storytelling promotes a collaborative community model and reflects Indigenous pedagogies in which the community is part of the educational experience. So these two pictures are of my daughter. On the top, there's a picture with my mom reading to my daughter, and there's a picture on the bottom where my daughter's smiling at her great grandmother who has a book and is also reading to her. So I thought those were cool pictures that reflect storytelling. Storytelling can also just be told orally. Storytelling can be read from a book. There's many ways to tell a story. Sometimes it's through song, sometimes it's through dance. So it's just not specific to one form. So that was a short clip of my daughter. She's 1 year old in the video, and she is pretending to read. And so what we know about babies when story time or storytelling is incorporated into their learning experiences is that they often will mimic what they are learning. And so there she is pretending to read because she has much exposure to storytelling and appears to really love it. So an important part of the action plan is to gain consensus. Children who attend the child care centers and Head Starts are part of the United community, and so gaining consensus is very important. So an idea for gaining consensus that I came up with is hosting a community meeting. This community meeting can be promoted on social media, through word of mouth. We can put posters up or through mass mailings. And the meeting is where the ideas of what indigenizing early childcare educational experiences consist of would be shared. The vision of why it is essential to indigenize early childcare experiences and the need to protect and preserve the Oneida culture and language would be shared. Community members would have the opportunity to have open discussion on whether they support the initiative or not and have a chance to offer feedback or other ideas. Once there appears to be an agreement or consensus among community members, an offering of food or traditional medicines such as tobacco, sweetgrass, cedar, or sage should be offered as a token of gratitude. Providing a meal or offering medicines is a way to thank the community members for taking the time to attend the community meeting. And also serving food and offering our traditional medicines is considered a protocol of many indigenous tribes. And so by utilizing this tradition, the traditional teachings of our ancestors are also carried forward. So in closing, I am really passionate about my topic. Children are fundamental to the survival of indigenous cultures. And so I really think that language and culture must be presented together in early educational experiences in order for indigenous children to access traditional knowledge. By indigenizing early educational experiences, this promotes the recovery, the revitalization, and preservation of indigenous knowledge and our languages. It's also a huge step towards decolonization, and early educational experiences serve as the foundation for indigenous ways of viewing and interacting with the world. And I think it's just really important that we go back to our original knowledge systems to preserve our cultural language and worldviews, which are built right into our identities. When children are babies and toddlers, it's their first exposure to, I guess, education if they go to daycare or Head Starts. And so in order to create a strong foundation for them, I think it is absolutely essential for, I guess, everybody in all tribal communities to indigenize the early childcare experiences. it is our Indigenous education. It's embedded, transmitted, and formed within our Indigenous languages. And I just think that part of our caring and teaching the children, it's considered a sacred and greatly valued responsibility for Indigenous peoples. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation. And here are all of my references. Thank you.